My name is Audrey Wilson. I am 32 years old, and I thought I knew what rock bottom felt like until the moment my boss Miranda deleted months of my work with a single swipe. 6 years of design school, 3 years at a top agency, countless sleepless nights all disappeared into the digital void as she sneered at me. I never imagined that the phone call coming in at that exact moment would change everything. If you have ever had someone underestimate your worth, you are going to want to hear what happened next. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Hit subscribe and stick around if you have ever dealt with a toxic boss who tried to crush your spirit. I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design with honors and a portfolio that landed me interviews at the top 5 advertising agencies in the country. My professors called me a natural talent, someone who could blend artistic vision with commercial sensibility. That rare combination caught the attention of Sterling & Gray Advertising in Chicago, one of the most cutthroat agencies known for their high-profile clients and award-winning campaigns. When I first walked into their glass and steel office overlooking Lake Michigan, I felt like I had finally made it. The walls were adorned with Clio awards and framed advertisements for luxury brands that everyone recognized. The creative floor buzzed with designers in sleek outfits hunched over tablets speaking in the shorthand of Kerning CMYK values and brand guidelines. 3 years into my time at Sterling & Gray, I had worked my way up from junior designer to senior graphic designer. It was prestigious on paper, but the reality was brutal hours, constant pressure, and a workplace culture that thrived on competition rather than collaboration. Every Monday morning meeting felt like walking into a gladiator arena where only the strongest ideas survived. My apartment reflected the strange contradiction of my life. Located in Wicker Park, it was a small one-bedroom with beautiful natural light that I rarely got to enjoy. While I helped create aspirational imagery for luxury brands during the day, my own life was decidedly modest. IKEA furniture mixed with a few splurges like my professional-grade desktop and drawing tablet. The walls were covered in prints from my favorite artists and a few of my own personal projects, things I worked on between 1 and 4 in the morning when I could not sleep, because my mind was still racing with ideas. The only person who really understood what I was going through was Zoe Chen, another designer who had started at Sterling & Gray around the same time I did. We bonded over shared midnight deadline pizzas and mutual eye rolls during particularly pretentious client presentations. Zoe worked in the digital team while I specialized in print and integrated campaigns, so we were not direct competitors, which made our friendship possible in the cutthroat environment. "You look like you have not slept in days," Zoe said one morning, sliding an extra coffee across my desk before anyone else arrived. "That is because I have not," I admitted, gratefully accepting the caffeine offering. The Luxe Beauty campaign revisions were due this morning. I was here until 2, went home to shower, and came right back. Zoe winced. "Miranda again." I nodded, not needing to elaborate. Miranda Parker, our creative director, had a reputation throughout the industry for 2 things: brilliant campaigns and destroying the souls of everyone who worked under her. The Luxe Beauty campaign was my big break, or at least it was supposed to be. The cosmetics giant was rebranding their entire product line, and for the first time, I had been assigned as the lead designer. What made it even more significant was that Charlotte Reed, the marketing director at Luxe Beauty, had specifically requested me after seeing my work on a smaller project the previous year. "Your aesthetic perfectly aligns with the direction we want to take," Charlotte had told me during the initial briefing while Miranda smiled tightly beside me. What no one at work knew was how much I needed this campaign to succeed. My personal projects, the ones I created during those sleepless nights, were starting to gain attention in certain artistic circles. I had been invited to display some pieces at an underground art show in the city, something that blended graphic design with social commentary. It was the kind of creative fulfillment that my advertising job rarely provided, but it did not pay the bills. My parents still did not understand my career choice. They had both worked steady government jobs in Minnesota for 30 years and viewed the creative industry as unstable and frivolous. "When are you going to get a real job with benefits and retirement?" my father asked during our monthly phone calls. "I have benefits, Dad," I would reply, not mentioning the 80-hour weeks or the fact that my boss regularly made designers cry in the bathroom. There was one other person at Sterling & Gray who made the place bearable: Marcus Johnson, an account executive who actually respected the creative process. While most account people pushed unreasonable client demands without question, Marcus served as a buffer, pushing back when timelines were impossible or when clients wanted to destroy good design with too many revisions. "Your concepts for the Luxe campaign are fantastic," he told me, after an internal review, hanging back after everyone else had left the conference room. "The way you have integrated their heritage with a modern approach is exactly what they need." "Thanks, Marcus," I said, gathering my presentation boards. "Let us hope Miranda agrees." His expression told me everything I needed to know. Miranda rarely agreed with anything she had not come up with herself, and both of us knew it. As I stared at my computer screen that evening, fine-tuning the typography on the main campaign tagline, I thought about how much was riding on this project. It could mean a promotion, a significant raise award recognition, and most importantly, the leverage I needed to push back against Miranda's constant undermining. What I did not know then was that this campaign would change my life, but not in any of the ways I had imagined. Miranda Parker was a legend in the advertising world, and she never let anyone forget it. At 45, she had a collection of industry awards that took up an entire wall in her corner office. Her reputation preceded her everywhere she went, from client meetings to industry events, where people would whisper as she walked by in her impeccably tailored suits and signature red-bottom heels. Miranda started as a graphic designer, just like UHR had told me during my orientation, as if this was supposed to be inspiring rather than terrifying. What they failed to mention was how she had climbed to her position by taking credit for others' work and systematically eliminating anyone she perceived as a threat. I still remember my first presentation to her 3 weeks into the job. I had worked through the weekend on concepts for a small wine label client, creating detailed mock-ups that blended traditional elements with modern typography. "This is what you came up with," Miranda had said, flipping through my carefully prepared boards with barely a glance. "It looks like student work. Start over." I had gone back to my desk, fighting tears, and redone everything. The next version received the same dismissal. It was only on the third round, when I essentially created a design that mimicked Miranda's own style from previous campaigns, that she nodded with approval. "Now you are learning," she had said, taking the boards. The next day I overheard her presenting my concepts to the client as my vision for your brand. This pattern repeated itself countless times over the years. Miranda would reject work, publicly humiliating designers in front of their peers, then privately use elements of the same work in presentations to clients. She maintained her position through a careful balance of fear, strategic networking, and delivering results regardless of whose ideas they originally were. What made it worse was how differently she behaved when upper management or clients were present. Suddenly, we were my talented team and my creative stars. She would put her arm around the same people she had berated hours earlier, taking credit for mentoring and developing our skills. The power dynamic in the office was clear to everyone. The creative department existed in a state of constant anxiety, with designers competing not just to create the best work, but to survive Miranda's arbitrary judgment. Several talented people had quit over the years, unable to handle the psychological toll. Those who stayed developed various coping mechanisms, from keeping their heads down to becoming Miranda's informants, reporting on their colleagues in exchange for favorable treatment. For some reason, Miranda had singled me out for special attention from the beginning. Perhaps she recognized something in me that reminded her of herself, or more likely she sensed that I had the potential to eventually challenge her position. "Audrey has a unique perspective," I once overheard her telling our agency president during a portfolio review, "but she lacks discipline and commercial understanding. I am trying to mentor her, but it is challenging." This was her typical approach, acknowledging talent just enough to show she could spot it while undermining it in the same breath. The result was that upper management saw her as both brilliant and nurturing a creative genius who was also developing the next generation. The reality was far different. Miranda had blocked my promotion twice with performance reviews that contradicted the actual feedback my work had received from clients. She routinely assigned me projects with impossible deadlines, then criticized the results as rushed or underdeveloped. When I worked late to meet her demands, she questioned my time management skills. Everything came to a head during a tense meeting about the Luxe Beauty campaign 6 weeks before the final presentation. The client had loved my initial concepts, which featured diverse models of different ages and backgrounds photographed in natural light, with minimal retouching, a bold departure from the typical glossy perfection of cosmetics. Advertising. "The authenticity of this approach really connects with our new brand values," Charlotte from Luxe had said enthusiastically. After the clients left, Miranda closed the conference room door. "We need to pivot," she announced. "The concept is too safe, too expected." "But the client just approved the direction," I said, confused. "They specifically mentioned how well it aligned with their values." Miranda fixed me with a cold stare. "Are you the creative director, Audrey? Do you have 20 years of experience in this industry? The client does not know what they want until we show it to them." She proceeded to completely change the brief, demanding a new concept that contradicted everything the client had just approved. The timeline remained unchanged, which meant I would need to develop an entirely new campaign approach in half the time originally allocated. "I want comprehensive revisions by Monday morning," she said, gathering her things. "And Audrey, do not disappoint me again." As she left, Marcus caught my eye from across the table, his expression a mixture of sympathy and resignation. We both knew what was happening. Miranda was setting me up to fail. That night I called Zoe in tears. "I cannot do this," I told her. "It is literally impossible to deliver what she wants in this time frame." "Yes, you can," Zoe said firmly. "And you will. Because if anyone can pull off a miracle, it is you. Plus, I am coming over with takeout, and we are going to work on this together all weekend." "You do not have to do that," I protested. "Yes, I do. Because someday when you are running your own agency, and I need a job, you will remember this moment," she joked, though we both knew there was some truth to it. What I did not tell Zoe was that I was seriously considering quitting. I had enough savings to last a couple of months, and maybe I could freelance while looking for a position at an agency with a less toxic culture. But something kept me from giving up, a stubborn determination not to let Miranda win, combined with genuine passion for the Luxe Beauty brand and the opportunity it represented. Little did I know that Miranda's sabotage attempt would set in motion a chain of events that would change both our lives forever. The next 6 weeks became a blur of sleepless nights, skipped meals, and endless revisions. I transformed my apartment into a war room with concept boards covering every available surface. My dining table disappeared beneath printouts, color swatches, and coffee-stained notebooks. I stopped going to my weekly yoga class, canceled plans with friends outside the industry, and subsisted primarily on delivery food and the protein bars Zoe kept bringing me. The new concept Miranda demanded was completely different from what the client had approved. Instead of authentic, diverse models in natural settings, she wanted high-fashion, avant-garde imagery with elaborate makeup looks and surreal backgrounds. It was as if she had deliberately chosen an approach that would require the most work in the least amount of time. I threw myself into it despite my reservations. I researched cutting-edge fashion photographers, created mood boards for surreal landscapes that could be built or digitally generated, and sketched countless makeup concepts that pushed boundaries while still feeling wearable enough for a commercial cosmetics brand. During the day, I coordinated with our production team, working out budgets and timelines for a shoot that would normally take months to plan. At night, I refined the visual language of the campaign, developing a cohesive look that could work across print, digital, and in-store displays. "When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" Marcus asked one evening, finding me alone in the office at 9:30 p.m. "Tuesday, I think," I replied, not looking up from my monitor, where I was adjusting the contrast on a series of composite images. "Or maybe that was last week." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Audrey, you know what she is doing, right? This is not just about the campaign." I stopped working and looked up at him. "I know exactly what she is doing. She is hoping I will crash and burn so she can swoop in at the last minute, fix everything, and be the hero. But I am not going to give her that satisfaction." Marcus nodded, then reached into his bag and handed me a flash drive. "The client sent over some additional consumer research today. Miranda asked me not to share it with you yet. Said she wanted to review it first. But I thought you might find it useful." This was the kind of quiet rebellion that made Marcus valuable. He never openly defied Miranda, but he found ways to undermine her more manipulative tactics. The research proved invaluable. It confirmed what I had suspected all along. Luxe Beauty's customers were tired of unrealistic beauty standards and digitally perfected images. They wanted to see products on people who looked like them in lighting conditions that mimicked real life. Armed with this knowledge, I made a risky decision. I would develop 2 complete campaign concepts: the avant-garde approach Miranda had demanded, and a refined version of my original authentic concept incorporating the new consumer insights. This meant doubling my already impossible workload, but something told me it would be worth it. I brought in Zoe to help with the digital components, swearing her to secrecy. "Are you insane?" she asked when I explained my plan. "You are already working 20-hour days." "Probably," I admitted. "But I have a feeling about this. Charlotte specifically requested me for a reason. She liked my original approach." Zoe sighed but agreed to help. We established a system where she would work on digital extensions for both concepts after her regular workday ended, while I focused on the core campaign visuals. The photography coordination alone was a nightmare. For Miranda's concept, we needed a high-fashion photographer with experience in surreal imagery, elaborate set construction, professional models with specific looks, and a studio large enough to accommodate multiple setups. For my backup concept, I wanted a documentary-style photographer known for capturing authentic moments, a diverse cast of real people, rather than models, and locations that felt lived in rather than manufactured. By some miracle, I managed to book both shoots back-to-back, telling Miranda that the second day was for backup shots and alternatives. She was too busy with other clients to attend either day, which was exactly what I had hoped for. The first shoot went as planned, producing the elaborate surreal images Miranda had specified. The models looked otherworldly, the makeup was editorial rather than wearable, and the backgrounds were visually stunning but completely divorced from reality. The second shoot was entirely different. I had cast a diverse group of women ranging in age from 21 to 73 with different skin tones, body types, and personal styles. The photographer captured them applying makeup in their own ways, laughing genuinely, and showing the kind of authentic beauty that resonated with real consumers. Back at the office, I worked furiously to develop both campaigns into comprehensive presentations. For Miranda's version, I created elaborate layouts with dramatic typography and bold color treatments. For my backup version, I took a more restrained approach, letting the authentic imagery take center stage, supported by warm, inviting typography and accessible language. As the deadline approached, my body began to revolt against the abuse I had subjected it to. I developed a persistent eye twitch. My skin broke out from stress, and I caught myself falling asleep mid-mouse click, jerking awake with a racing heart. "You need to go home and sleep." Zoe insisted, finding me at my desk at 2 a.m., the night before the internal review. "The work is done, Audrey. You have done everything humanly possible." "Just one more hour," I promised, though we both knew it would be more. When morning came, I had completed both campaign presentations. The official one for Miranda featured all the avant-garde elements she had demanded. The backup was safely stored in my personal cloud account, ready if an opportunity arose to show it. I looked terrible with dark circles under my eyes and skin that had not seen sunlight in weeks. But the work was immaculate. Even in my exhausted state, I knew I had created something special with both concepts. Whether Miranda would acknowledge that was another question entirely. As I prepared for the internal review, where I would present to Miranda before the client presentation the following day, I received an unexpected email from Charlotte at Luxe Beauty. "Looking forward to seeing your work tomorrow, Audrey," she wrote. "I have been so impressed with your understanding of our brand and vision so far. The entire marketing team is excited to see how you have developed the concept." The email was addressed only to me, not to Miranda or anyone else at the agency. It confirmed what I had suspected despite Miranda's interference. The client still saw this as my campaign. This gave me a small spark of hope as I headed into what I knew would be a difficult review with my boss. What I did not know was that the next day would bring both the greatest professional humiliation and the greatest opportunity of my career. The morning of the Luxe Beauty client presentation dawned bright and clear, a beautiful Chicago spring day that I barely noticed as I arrived at the Sterling and Gray offices at 6:30 a.m. The presentation was scheduled for 10, and I wanted plenty of time to prepare the conference room, check that all the printed materials were perfect, and run through my talking points one last time. The office was peaceful at that hour, with only the cleaning staff and a few early risers from the account team present. I set up in our main conference room, arranging physical samples of the avant-garde campaign concepts on the large table and ensuring the digital presentation was loaded and working correctly on the room's display system. Everything looked flawless. Despite the impossible timeline and Miranda's obvious attempt to sabotage me, I had delivered a campaign that was visually stunning and strategically sound, even if it was not what I believed the client truly wanted. My backup concept remained my secret weapon safely stored in my cloud account, though I was not sure if I would get the opportunity to show it. At 8:15, the elevator doors opened and Miranda strode onto the creative floor. She wore a black tailored suit, with her signature red-soled heels hair perfectly styled, not a hint of the stress that had reduced me to a caffeine-fueled zombie. She walked directly to the conference room without stopping at her office, clearly eager to review what I had prepared. "Good morning, Audrey," she said coolly, setting her designer handbag on a chair. "I trust everything is ready for review." "Yes, all set," I replied, gesturing to the materials laid out on the table and the presentation queued up on the screen. "I can walk you through the concept now if you have time." "I certainly hope it is better than the preliminary work you showed me last week," she said, picking up one of the printed boards and examining it critically. Last week's review had been predictably brutal, with Miranda dismissing days of work in minutes and demanding numerous changes that contradicted her previous direction. I had incorporated everything she asked for, swallowing my creative objections in the interest of getting to the finish line. I began presenting the campaign, explaining the concept of beauty beyond reality that tied together the surreal imagery and avant-garde approach. As I spoke, I noticed Miranda's expression shifting from critical to something else, something I had rarely seen directed at my work concern. She interrupted me mid-sentence. "The photography is too editorial. The client will think it is not commercial enough." "You specifically asked for high-fashion surreal imagery," I reminded her gently. "We discussed moving away from commercial looks to create something more artistic." I said, "Fashion-forward, not unwearable." She snapped, though I distinctly remembered her using the word unwearable as a positive during our brief. "And these colors are too saturated. It looks amateur." I took a deep breath. "I can adjust the color treatment before the presentation if you prefer." Miranda continued to flip through the materials, her frown deepening. When she reached the digital concepts Zoe and I had developed, she actually scoffed. "These interactive elements are completely impractical. No one will understand how to use them." "We conducted user testing last week," I said, which was true, though not officially sanctioned. Zoe and I had recruited friends to test the digital concepts over the weekend. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Miranda looked up sharply. "You conducted testing without my approval." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened further. "Why is Charlotte Reed emailing me asking specifically about your contributions to the campaign?" she demanded. My stomach dropped. "I do not know. Perhaps because she requested me for the project initially." "This is my campaign," Miranda said, her voice rising. "I am the creative director. All work goes through me and represents my vision for this agency." I remained silent, knowing anything I said would only make things worse. Miranda continued to review the materials, her agitation growing visibly with each passing minute. It was clear that she was realizing something that terrified her. The work was good. Too good to dismiss easily, too good to take major issues with before the client, and most threatening of all, too clearly bearing my creative signature rather than hers. "The client presentation is in less than 2 hours," I ventured after several minutes of tense silence. "Should we discuss how we want to divide up the presenting responsibilities?" Miranda's head snapped up. "Divide? You think you will be presenting to the client?" "Charlotte specifically mentioned wanting to hear from me in her email yesterday," I said, immediately regretting my words. "She emailed you directly?" Miranda's voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, just a brief note saying she was looking forward to the presentation." Miranda stood suddenly, walking around the table to where my laptop sat open, displaying the campaign files. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked at me with cold fury in her eyes. "You have been going around me to the client," she said. It was not a question. "No, absolutely not," I protested. "Charlotte reached out to me. I have been fully transparent with you about all client communications." Something in Miranda seemed to snap then. Perhaps it was the pressure of the impending presentation, or the realization that her attempt to set me up for failure had backfired, or simply years of insecurity finally boiling over. Whatever the cause, what happened next would be seared into my memory forever. "This work is absolute trash," she shouted, her carefully maintained professional facade crumbling completely. Before I could react, Miranda grabbed my mouse and began rapidly selecting all the campaign files on my desktop. I watched in horror as she dragged them to the recycle bin. "What are you doing?" I gasped, reaching for the laptop, but she blocked me with her body. "Teaching you a lesson about respect and hierarchy," she hissed, emptying the recycle bin with a few vicious clicks. "Try again if you can." I stood frozen, watching as months of work disappeared in seconds. The comprehensive campaign that had cost me countless sleepless nights, strained relationships, and physical health was gone. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching the scene from outside my body. Some distant part of my brain registered that I should be panicking, but I was too shocked to feel anything yet. Miranda straightened up, smoothing her jacket with an expression of grim satisfaction. "Now perhaps you understand who is in charge here. You have 2 hours to pull together something presentable, or your career at this agency is over." Just as the reality of what had happened began to sink in, bringing with it the first waves of panic and despair, my phone rang. The sound cut through the tense silence of the conference room like a lifeline. I glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number with a Chicago area code. "Well," Miranda demanded, "are you going to start recreating the work, or are you just going to stand there?" I looked from my phone to Miranda, then back to my devastated laptop screen. In that moment, something shifted inside me. A strange calm descended, replacing the initial shock with crystal clarity. I picked up my phone. "Excuse me," I said to Miranda. "I need to take this call." Her mouth fell open in disbelief as I walked out of the conference room, answering the phone as I stepped into the hallway. "Hello, this is Audrey Wilson," I said, my voice steadier than I would have thought possible. "Audrey, this is Julian West from West Creative," said a warm, confident voice on the other end. "I hope I am not catching you at a bad time." As Miranda fumed in the conference room behind me, and the remnants of my deleted campaign flashed through my mind, I almost laughed at the understatement. "Actually, Mr. West," I replied, "your timing could not be more perfect." "Please call me Julian," the voice continued. "I have been following your work for some time now. Audrey and I have to say I am incredibly impressed." I walked further away from the conference room, finding a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. My mind was racing to place the name. Julian West was a legend in the creative industry, having founded West Creative after leaving one of the largest agencies in New York 5 years ago. His boutique firm had quickly developed a reputation for innovative work that pushed boundaries while remaining strategically sound, winning more awards per capita than any other agency in the country. "Thank you," I managed to respond, still processing the surreal contrast between the professional destruction I had just witnessed and this unexpected call. "How did you come across my work?" Julian chuckled. "The Underground Gallery exhibition 3 months ago. The series you created examining consumer culture through deconstructed advertisements. Brilliant stuff. Not many people can bridge the gap between commercial design and artistic commentary so seamlessly." I felt a flush of surprise and pleasure. The Underground show had been a small affair in a converted warehouse space, attended mostly by local artists and a few industry insiders. I had exhibited under my first and middle names only, Audrey Elizabeth, to keep my personal work separate from my agency identity. The fact that Julian West had not only attended but recognized me was astonishing. "That is very kind of you," I said. "The exhibition was a passion project quite different from my agency work." "That is exactly why I am calling," Julian replied. "Great commercial work can be found in many places, but designers who maintain that creative spark, that willingness to challenge conventions, are much rarer. We have been watching your career with interest, Audrey." Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Miranda pacing angrily, occasionally shooting daggers at me with her eyes. I turned my back to her, focusing on Julian's words. "West Creative is expanding," he continued. "We have just signed 3 major new clients and are opening a Chicago office to complement our New York headquarters. I am looking for a creative director to lead the Chicago team, someone with both solid commercial experience and a fresh perspective. Someone exactly like you." I nearly dropped my phone. "Creative director," I echoed, unable to keep the shock from my voice. "Yes," Julian confirmed. "Full creative control of the Chicago office, reporting directly to me. A team of 12 designers to start, with plans to double that by next year. And of course an appropriate compensation package to reflect the responsibility." My mind was spinning. I had dreamed of reaching creative director level eventually, but at Sterling and Gray, that would have taken at least another 5 years, assuming Miranda ever allowed it to happen. This sounds incredible, I said cautiously, but I should mention that I am currently a senior designer, not a creative director or even an associate director. Titles are just labels, Julian dismissed. I have seen your work, both commercial and personal. I have spoken with people who have worked with you. You have the vision, the talent, and from what I hear, the leadership qualities needed for this role. The rest can be learned quickly. As if sensing my continued hesitation, he added, the salary is $400,000 annually with a signing bonus and equity options in the company. I actually gasped. My current salary was just under $90,000, which was decent but barely covered Chicago living expenses, plus my student loans. $400,000 was life-changing money, the kind that would not just pay off my debt but allow me to live comfortably while building savings and investments. That is extremely generous, I managed to say. It reflects the value we place on finding the right talent, Julian replied simply. We are building something special, Audrey, and we want you to be part of it. Through the window, I could see Miranda had now moved to my desk, rifling through my drawers with an expression of barely contained rage. The sight should have filled me with anxiety, but instead I felt a strange detachment, as if I were already watching my old life from a distance. When would you need an answer? I asked, buying time to think. Ideally soon, Julian said. We are ready to move forward with the Chicago office immediately, but I understand this is a significant decision. Would a few hours be sufficient to consider? Perhaps we could meet for lunch today to discuss further. A few hours. The client presentation was in less than 2. By lunchtime, my career at Sterling and Gray might already be in shambles if I could not somehow recreate months of work in a matter of hours. Actually, I said, making a split-second decision, I may have an unexpected opening in my schedule very soon. Could I call you back within the hour to arrange that lunch? Of course, Julian agreed, sounding pleased. I look forward to it. As I ended the call, a realization hit me like a thunderbolt. Miranda had deleted my files from my work computer, but she did not know about my personal cloud storage. For the first time since I started working at Sterling and Gray, I had broken protocol by keeping copies of my work outside the agency servers, primarily because I had been developing the backup campaign on my own time and did not want it on the company system. Both campaigns, the avant-garde version Miranda had demanded, and my authentic backup concept, were safely stored where she could not reach them. All was not lost. I returned to the conference room where Miranda stood with her arms crossed, radiating cold fury. How dare you walk out during a crisis to take a personal call, she said. The client will be here in less than 2 hours and you have nothing to show them. I nodded, meekly playing along. You are right. I am sorry for the interruption. Well, she demanded, what are you going to do now? I will see what I can recreate from memory, I said, returning to my laptop and making a show of opening new files. Perhaps I can at least pull together some basic concepts. Miranda watched me suspiciously for a moment, then seemed satisfied that I was appropriately devastated and working desperately to salvage something. I will be in my office preparing to explain to the client why my senior designer failed to deliver acceptable work, she said pointedly. Call me when you have something worth looking at, though I doubt that will happen in the next hour. As soon as she left, I quickly accessed my cloud storage and downloaded both campaign presentations to a hidden folder on my desktop. Then I texted Marcus emergency. Can you come to the conference room? Bring thumb drive. He appeared minutes later, looking concerned. What is going on? Miranda just stormed past my office, looking like she was ready to commit murder. She deleted all my files for the Luxe presentation, I explained quickly. Everything. But I have backups. I need you to help me get them to the client. His eyes widened. She did what? That is insane, not to mention possibly illegal. It gets better, I said, unable to keep a small smile from forming. I just got a job offer. Creative director position. $400,000 a year. Marcus stared at me for a beat, then broke into a grin. Holy shit, Audrey. From who? Julian West. His grin faltered. The Julian West Creative. I nodded, feeling a surreal bubble of laughter rising in my chest despite the crisis at hand. Apparently, he saw my personal work at an exhibition a few months ago. They are opening a Chicago office. Marcus let out a low whistle. That is incredible. But what about the presentation today? That is where I need your help, I said, plugging in the thumb drive he had brought. I have 2 complete campaign concepts ready to go. The one Miranda demanded and a backup I developed based on what I believe the client actually wants. I quickly copied both presentations to the drive and handed it back to him. I need you to bring these into the client meeting, as if it recovered them. By then, I will have spoken with Julian again and decided what I am doing next. But either way, I want Charlotte to see the work. I did not kill myself for 6 weeks just for it to disappear. Marcus pocketed the drive and studied my face. You are really considering taking this offer, aren't you? Wouldn't you? I asked. In a heartbeat, he admitted. But what are you going to do for the next 2 hours? Miranda thinks you are in here desperately trying to recreate everything. I smiled, feeling a strange sense of freedom. I am going to pretend to do exactly that, and I am going to call Julian West back and accept his offer. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. Good for you, Audrey. It is about time something good happened around here. After he left, I stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, the buildings gleaming in the morning sunlight. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected hope. Not just for a better job or more money, but for the chance to do creative work in an environment that valued rather than crushed my vision. I picked up my phone and dialed Julian's number. Julian, this is Audrey Wilson. About that offer to be your creative director. Yes, I accept. 10 o'clock arrived with the precision of a Swiss watch. From my hidden vantage point near the reception area, I watched Charlotte Reed and her team from Luxe Beauty arrive, all polished professionalism and excited energy. They had every reason to be excited. Today was supposed to be the unveiling of their brand's new direction, a campaign that would redefine their image in the marketplace. Miranda greeted them with her practiced client smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. She guided them toward the main conference room, making small talk about Chicago traffic and the unseasonably pleasant weather. Not once did she mention the disaster that had occurred 2 hours earlier, or the fact that, as far as she knew, there was no presentation to show them. I slipped into the conference room behind the group, taking a seat in the corner as far from Miranda as possible. She shot me a warning glance, but could not make a scene in front of the clients. I kept my expression neutral, giving nothing away. Before we begin, Miranda said smoothly, I want to manage expectations slightly. We have been exploring some very ambitious creative directions for Luxe Beauty, and while we have made excellent progress, we are still refining certain elements. Charlotte frowned slightly. I was under the impression we would be seeing the completed campaign concepts today. That was the timeline we agreed upon. Creativity cannot always be held to rigid timelines, Miranda replied with a practiced chuckle. But rest assured, what we have to show you today captures the essence of the direction we want to take. I watched this performance with a strange detachment, my phone hidden in my lap, as I exchanged text messages with Julian about meeting him for lunch at noon. We had spent an hour on the phone earlier discussing his vision for the Chicago office and my role in building it from the ground up. The more we talked, the more certain I became that this was not just an escape from a toxic situation, but a genuine opportunity to do the best work of my career. Miranda began a rambling presentation about beauty industry trends and consumer insights, clearly stalling for time. Charlotte's team exchanged confused glances as minutes ticked by without a single visual being shown. Perhaps we could see the actual campaign concepts now, Charlotte suggested after 15 minutes of Miranda's increasingly desperate monologue. Of course, Miranda said, her smile tightening. We have been exploring a very avant-garde approach that pushes boundaries and challenges conventional beauty imagery. She clicked to advance her presentation, but the screen remained blank. With growing horror, she clicked again and again, then laughed nervously. Technology always failing at the worst moments, she said. Audrey, perhaps you could check the connection. I rose obediently and pretended to examine the presentation system, though I knew perfectly well there was nothing wrong with it. There was simply nothing to show. It seems to be working correctly, I said. Perhaps the files were corrupted. Miranda's eyes flashed with anger at my barely disguised reference to her deletion spree earlier that morning. We appear to be having some technical difficulties, she told the clients. Perhaps we should reschedule for later this week when we can ensure everything runs smoothly. Charlotte's disappointment was palpable. We have our production meeting tomorrow to set budgets and timelines based on today's presentation. Postponing would put our entire product launch schedule at risk. Just as the situation was reaching its most tense point, the conference room door opened, and Marcus walked in carrying a leather portfolio and a thumb drive. I apologize for the interruption, he said smoothly. It was able to recover the presentation files that were lost in this morning's server issue. I have everything ready to go. Miranda's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, realization, and barely concealed panic. How fortunate, she said through gritted teeth. Though perhaps we should review them first before showing the client. We are already running behind schedule, Charlotte pointed out. And I would very much like to see what Audrey has been working on. She was specifically requested for this project based on her previous work for us. Marcus plugged in the thumb drive and opened the first presentation, the avant-garde concept that Miranda had demanded. As the images appeared on screen, there was a moment of appreciative murmurs from the client team. This is certainly bold, Charlotte acknowledged, studying the surreal imagery and dramatic compositions. Though perhaps a bit further from our brand identity than we had discussed initially. Miranda jumped in quickly. This is just one creative direction we have been exploring. Very cutting edge, very fashion forward. Marcus caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. He clicked to open the second presentation, my backup concept featuring the authentic, diverse beauty imagery that aligned with Luxe Beauty's stated values. The reaction was immediate and striking. Charlotte literally sat forward in her chair, her expression lighting up. This is exactly what we discussed. The authentic beauty, the diversity, the natural settings that still feel aspirational. It is perfect. Miranda looked confused, then alarmed. She had never seen this concept before because I had developed it in secret, knowing she would reject it outright. Yes, she stammered, trying to recover. We wanted to present both directions to give you options. The second concept was always our preferred approach. Who developed this concept? Charlotte asked, still gazing at the presentation with evident pleasure. Before Miranda could answer, Marcus spoke up. Audrey was the lead on both concepts, but particularly championed this authentic beauty direction based on the consumer insights and your brand values. All eyes turned to me in my corner seat. Miranda's gaze could have melted steel, but Charlotte was smiling warmly. Audrey, would you walk us through this concept? I would love to hear your thinking directly. I stood and moved to the front of the room, feeling a strange sense of calm despite the tension crackling in the air. Of course. The concept is called Beauty in Every Moment, and it centers on the idea that beauty is not a mask we put on for special occasions, but an authentic expression of self that enhances our natural features. For the next 30 minutes, I presented the campaign in detail, explaining the photography direction, the typography choices, the copywriting approach, and how it would all extend across print, digital, social, and in-store experiences. The client team was engaged and enthusiastic, asking thoughtful questions and building on the ideas I presented. Miranda sat in rigid silence, occasionally attempting to interject with as I directed or as we discussed, but these comments fell flat, as it became increasingly obvious that this was entirely my vision. When I finished the presentation, Charlotte turned to her team. Thoughts? It is perfect, said her marketing manager. Exactly what our research said consumers want to see. Completely on brand, but still fresh and distinctive, added another team member. Charlotte nodded, then turned to me. Audrey, this is exceptional work. You have captured exactly what Luxe Beauty stands for as we move into this new chapter. I would like you to lead the implementation of this campaign personally. Actually, Miranda interjected desperately as creative director once. I will be overseeing all aspects of the campaign execution. Audrey will certainly be involved, but ultimately this is my department and my responsibility. A heavy silence fell over the room. I took a deep breath, knowing the moment had arrived. I appreciate your confidence in me, Charlotte, I said, but I should inform everyone that as of today I will be leaving Sterling and Gray. Miranda's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide with shock. Charlotte looked equally surprised. I have accepted a position as creative director at West Creative's new Chicago office, I continued. Today is my last day here. The room erupted in a buzz of reactions. Charlotte looked disappointed but impressed. Several of her team members whispered to each other, and Marcus could not entirely suppress a smile. But it was Miranda's reaction that I will remember forever. Her perfectly composed facade crumbled completely, her face cycling through shock rage, and finally the dawning horror of realization. In a single morning, she had lost both a major campaign and the designer she had spent years undermining. West Creative, Charlotte repeated. Julian West's agency. That is quite a move, Audrey. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied. It was an unexpected opportunity. Well, Charlotte said, after a moment, this puts us in an interesting position. We love the campaign concept you have developed, but naturally, we want the person who created it to be involved in its execution. Miranda leapt on this. Sterling and Gray has a full team ready to implement Audrey's concept. I personally will ensure it maintains the vision she established. Charlotte held up a hand. Actually, I think we need to consider our options. Miranda, could you give us the room for a few minutes? I would like to speak with Audrey privately. The look on Miranda's face, as she was asked to leave her own conference room, was something I will treasure forever. She gathered her things with shaking hands and walked out without another word, her usual commanding presence deflated. Once she was gone, Charlotte turned to me. I will be direct, Audrey. We came to Sterling and Gray largely because of your previous work for us. This campaign concept is exactly what we want, but we want you to execute it. Would West Creative be interested in pitching for our business? The question caught me off guard. I cannot speak officially for them yet, but I could certainly discuss it with Julian. I know he is selective about clients focusing on brands with values that align with the agency's ethos. Charlotte nodded. Have him call me directly. In the meantime, we will pause our relationship with Sterling and Gray pending that conversation. After the meeting concluded and the clients had left, I returned to my desk to find Miranda standing there, arms crossed, face pale with fury. You planned this, she accused. You deliberately sabotaged this agency and stole a client. I did not steal anything, I replied calmly. And the only sabotage that happened today was when you deleted months of my work from my computer. Fortunately, I had backups. You will never work in this industry again, she threatened. I will make sure of it. I smiled, feeling nothing but pity for her. Actually, Miranda, I am about to become your direct competitor as creative director at West Creative, with a salary of $400,000 a year, I might add. Her face went slack with shock. That is impossible. You are not qualified. Apparently, Julian West disagrees, I said, gathering my personal items from my desk. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a lunch meeting with my new boss. As I walked toward the elevator, I could feel the eyes of the entire creative department on me. News traveled fast in agency environments. I caught sight of Zoe giving me a subtle thumbs up from her desk and Marcus stepping out of his office to nod respectfully as I passed. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, turning to face the office one last time. In the distance, I could see Miranda still standing by my desk, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As the doors closed, I allowed myself a single moment of pure, uncomplicated satisfaction. I had not just escaped a toxic situation, I had transcended it entirely. Word of my resignation spread through Sterling and Gray like wildfire. By the time I returned from my lunch with Julian, where we had discussed Charlotte's interest in bringing Luxe Beauty to West Creative, my email was flooded with messages from colleagues. Some were congratulatory, others curious, and a few from senior management attempting to convince me to reconsider. Zoe met me at the elevator, eyes wide with excitement. Is it true? $400,000, creative director? I nodded, still processing the whirlwind day myself. Julian West saw my pieces at that underground exhibition a few months ago. He has been tracking my work since then. This is unbelievable, she said, walking with me to my desk. Like career fairy tale level. Unbelievable. And now, Luxe Beauty might follow you there. Nothing is decided yet, I cautioned, though Julian had been extremely interested when I mentioned Charlotte's suggestion during our lunch. But yes, it is a possibility. As I began packing my personal items, a steady stream of designers stopped by my desk, many of whom I had barely spoken with before. They offered congratulations and asked questions about West Creative, their enthusiasm tinged with the unmistakable desire to escape their own situations. "Take me with you," whispered one junior designer who had been reduced to tears by Miranda just the previous week. I smiled sympathetically. "Let me get settled first, but send me your portfolio. We will be hiring." Around 2 p.m., I was called into an exit interview with HR. The representative, a woman named Diane, who had always been fair but necessarily diplomatic about Miranda's management style, closed the door and dropped her professional facade momentarily. "Between us," she said, "several people have reported what happened this morning with your files. That is completely unacceptable behavior from any employee, let alone a department head." "I appreciate your concern," I replied carefully, "but fortunately I had backups of everything." Diane nodded. "Smart. You are not the first person to have issues with Miranda, but you are the first to come out on top. Several members of the executive team are quite concerned about losing both you and potentially the Luxe Beauty account." "Perhaps they should have been concerned about Miranda's behavior years ago," I suggested mildly. She could not disagree. The rest of the exit interview was standard procedure, reviewing final paycheck information and benefits termination. When we finished, Diane extended her hand. "For what it is worth, many of us believe you deserved better treatment here. Good luck at West Creative." Back at my desk, I found Marcus and Zoe waiting to help me pack the last of my things. Miranda remained conspicuously absent, having apparently retreated to her office after our confrontation. "The partners are in emergency meetings about Luxe Beauty," Marcus informed me quietly. Apparently, Charlotte called the agency president directly after leaving and expressed serious concerns about continuing their relationship with Sterling and Gray. "That is not my intention," I said honestly. "I did not set out to damage the agency. We know that," Zoe assured me, "but Miranda did this to herself. Actions have consequences." As we finished boxing up my personal items, I took one last look around the creative department where I had spent 3 challenging years. Despite the toxicity of working under Miranda, I had grown tremendously as a designer here, developing resilience and determination I never knew I possessed. "Ready?" Marcus asked, picking up one of my boxes. I nodded, suddenly feeling the emotional weight of the day catching up with me. As we walked toward the elevator, a movement caught my eye. Miranda stood in the doorway of her office watching us leave. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw something unexpected in her expression. Fear. Not anger or resentment, but the raw fear of someone who realizes their carefully constructed facade is crumbling. I could have looked away or offered some parting shot, but instead, I simply nodded to her once before continuing on my way. Her methods had nearly broken me, but in the end, they had made me stronger and led me to something better. That was enough. Outside the building, I hugged Zoe and Marcus goodbye, promising to stay in touch and thanking them for their support through everything. "This is not the end," Zoe said firmly. "This is just the beginning of something amazing." 6 weeks later, I stood in the newly renovated space that would become West Creative Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, and the open concept layout hummed with the energy of possibility. Julian had given me complete freedom to build my team and establish the creative culture of the office. My first hire had been Zoe, bringing her on as digital creative director with a substantial raise from her Sterling and Gray salary. Together, we had carefully selected 10 other designers, balancing experienced talent with fresh perspectives from recent graduates. The announcement that Luxe Beauty had followed me to West Creative sent shockwaves through the Chicago advertising community. Within weeks, 3 other clients had reached out interested in working with the new agency that had lured both talent and business away from an established firm. My leadership approach was deliberately different from what I had experienced under Miranda. I made a point of giving credit publicly, providing constructive feedback privately, and creating an environment where creative risks were encouraged rather than punished. The result was a team that produced innovative work while maintaining healthy boundaries between professional and personal time. The first client presentation for Luxe Beauty is tomorrow. Zoe reminded me as we reviewed campaign materials spread across the conference table. "Are you nervous?" "Strangely, no," I replied, realizing it was true. "For the first time, I am presenting work I believe in to a client who respects my vision." "What is there to be nervous about?" The campaign launched 3 months later to overwhelmingly positive response. Beauty industry publications praised its authentic approach, and diverse representation and sales of Luxe products increased 15% in the first quarter following the rebrand. Julian called personally to congratulate me, mentioning that several New York clients were now requesting to work with the Chicago office specifically. On a crisp fall evening, I attended an industry awards ceremony representing West Creative. As I mingled during the cocktail hour, I spotted a familiar figure across the room. Miranda stood alone, nursing a drink, looking somehow smaller than I remembered. According to industry gossip, Sterling & Gray had lost 3 major accounts following the Luxe Beauty departure, and Miranda's position had been significantly diminished. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and after a moment's hesitation, I walked over to her. "Hello, Miranda," I said simply. She regarded me warily. "Audrey, congratulations on your success with West Creative. It seems you landed on your feet." "Thank you," I replied. "How are things at Sterling & Gray?" A flash of something like pain crossed her face. "Challenging, but we will recover." I nodded, feeling no desire to revel in her difficulties. "I am sure you will." An awkward silence fell between us. Finally, Miranda spoke again, her voice lower. "For what it is worth, I may have been too harsh in my assessment of your work." Coming from her, this qualified as a profound apology. I accepted it for what it was. "We all have different creative visions," I said diplomatically. "I hope you find the right environment for yours." As I walked away, I felt a profound sense of closure. The woman who had once seemed like an all-powerful obstacle in my career now appeared as she truly was: talented but deeply insecure, successful but fundamentally unhappy. Back in my apartment that evening, I looked around at the space that had witnessed so many late nights of work and tears of frustration. With my new salary, I could afford a much more luxurious place, but I had decided to stay for now, renovating instead of relocating. It served as a reminder of where I had come from and what I had overcome. On my wall hung a framed print from my underground exhibition, the one Julian West had seen. Beside it was a note from Charlotte at Luxe Beauty, thanking me for bringing their brand to life in a way that felt both authentic and aspirational. As I reflected on the journey of the past months, I realized how differently things might have gone if Miranda had not deleted my files that fateful morning. I might still be at Sterling & Gray, still suffering under toxic leadership, still doubting my own worth and vision. Sometimes what seems like our lowest moment is actually the catalyst for our greatest transformation. The most valuable lesson I had learned was not about design principles or agency politics, but about recognizing my own value even when others tried to diminish it. By believing in my vision enough to create a backup campaign, by having the foresight to keep copies of my work, and by being prepared when opportunity knocked, I had not just survived a crisis but emerged stronger from it. Now, as I led my own creative team, I made a point of nurturing rather than crushing talent, of lifting others up rather than tearing them down. Success, I had discovered, was not a zero-sum game where one person's rise necessitated another's fall. True creative leadership meant creating environments where everyone could thrive and grow. Have you ever had someone try to hold you back only to find that their actions ultimately propelled you forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if you are currently in a toxic work situation, remember that your value is not determined by how others treat you. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best opportunities if you stay true to yourself and your vision. Thank you for listening to my story today. If it resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their current struggle could be the beginning of their greatest success.